breathe for them as a result of that.
Hi, Mama.
تم استخراج الرصاصة من حجرات الدماغ من الخلف. فشلوها وركبوا جهاز بيبي شنط لحجب السائل الدماغي من التسرب.
This was Mir's second brush with death. Last year, as her family fled south, an Israeli missile fired on them, killing one of her aunts. Another aunt lost her leg.
والله أقول لك أكذب عليك، لا مش ما خفتش، إنه كانت يعني ما بين الموت والحياة.
The target at the end of a scope is unmistakable that they are a young human being. And when that trigger gets pulled on that target, it is not by accident at all, ever.
Children are easy targets, right? They are generally defenseless. It makes sense to target children if you're trying to target the future.
Faultline spoke to 20 American doctors who volunteered in hospitals across Gaza since the war began. They all reported treating children with gunshots, often fatal.
It's not a rogue soldier that lost their ethics. It's widespread throughout the entire Gaza Strip. There's a definitive pattern of Israeli soldiers targeting quite specifically children.
I didn't want to believe that children were being shot. Nobody wants to think that other humans are capable of annihilating children in that way. I had 18 cases of children with shots to the head. When you see one or two coming in that time that I was there, then I could say, maybe it's an accident, it's crossfire. But when you see that a child is being shot in the head every day, multiple times, in the abdomen, in the chest, those are intentional. Someone is doing that.
According to the Gaza Ministry of Health, children make up over a third of the death toll in Gaza. Nearly 16,000 have been killed, mostly by bombing. Doctors say it's impossible to know how many were shot, since Gaza's healthcare system has been destroyed by the Israeli military.
Israeli forces have killed so many children in Gaza that it is most likely we will never know all of their names.
Al Jazeera has been tracking incidents of children shot by the Israeli military. In one case, Israeli soldiers fired at 3-year-old Imad Abu Kara and his 2 cousins on their way back from buying fruit. One cousin, Hadil, who was 20, died immediately. But Imad still showed signs of life. As neighbors tried to drag him from the street, Israeli soldiers continued to fire. His other cousin, Aya, survived.
صار الطخ مرة تانية وأنا جريت وطخوا على هديل واستشهدت ووقعت على الأرض هي وعماد وكان بيتحرك قبل ما يستشهد وبينادي علينا وبتطلع على الناس.
الطفل الصغير اللي عمره 3 سنين ونص إنه طلع بس عشان سمع كلمنتينا وبده ياكل حبة كلمنتينا. فلما ابني مد ايده وحاول يتحرك فأعدموه برصاصهم.
In another case, Israeli soldiers shot 13-year-old Nahid Barbach and his older brother Ramez outside their home in Khan Yunis. The family was trying to evacuate south. Nahid was first shot in the leg. When he tried to get up, Israeli soldiers shot him twice more, in the back and in the neck. He was holding a white flag. When Ramez went to help him, he was shot in the heart.
أنا بحالة هستيريا، أنا خلاص أنا مش عارف، أنا كل اللي بدي أولادي، أنا بدي أولادي، يمكن يكون لسه فيهم الروح، يعني على أمل إنه لو أجى إسعاف يمكن فيهم الروح، يمكن نقدر ننجدهم. زي النافورة دمه من صفحته ورقبته ورجله وارتمى، عطول ارتمى على الموت، عطول.
You kind of want to scream at the top of your lungs about it to everyone.
I know that to some degree I'm complicit in that, right? I'm in this country, these are government officials that are making these decisions that we as a people have elected. I pay tax dollars.
How could you watch this and let it go on? How could you not say something? In what world is it okay to shoot a child in the head? If I can't speak up for something like this, what good am I?
The United States is Israel's largest military backer. For months, American doctors returning from Gaza warned that children were being shot, yet U.S. support persisted. In January, some of the doctors traveled to Washington, D.C. to urge lawmakers to take action.
It's very difficult just to acknowledge that I live in this country that's supplying the bombs or the guns or the ammunition for that bullet that was in Mira's head. This I want to show you is a little girl I treated. She's a 4-year-old named Mira. She got shot by a quadcopter sniper. This is Mira. She's a 4-year-old little girl. She was shot in the head. The meetings seem very rushed, like we're just trying to say what we're there to say and then just leave. This is Mira. She's a 4-year-old little girl. She got shot. I feel very futile. I feel like I'm not doing anything. I thought that they would be shocked to learn some of the things that we were seeing. Just seeing a child with a bullet in their head is a powerful, shocking thing to see. But it almost seemed like it wasn't new information. They say a bunch of non-substantial stuff. I mean, it's just like stuff. But it so misses the mark. I was met with some skepticism about the actual bullet and it being authentic. Yeah. I touched her, I saved her, my hands treated her. I held her in my arms when I went back last time, and for them to question that really happened it breaks my heart.
When you tell a U.S. lawmaker that you're seeing a pattern, what's their response?
They shrug their shoulders or, shake their head, but nothing substantial. A child should not be arriving with a bullet in their head. If that happened in the U.S., there would be law enforcement agencies all over the hospital. This is a regular occurrence in Gaza.
When I have to step over 8 dead babies to look for the ones that have a chance to survive.
We have more than 2 decades of evidence pointing to that this is a regular occurrence, and Israeli soldiers are never, ever held accountable. And so if they've been allowed to kill children with complete impunity, then it's absolutely not surprising that they would carry out these actions and attacks in Gaza, just the same as they've been doing in the West Bank.
Have you ever thought through what's the strategic reason to shoot a child? What message should we take from a military that would target children?
I've thought about it a lot, and the only conclusion I can come to is Israeli soldiers are shooting Palestinian children because they want to. And I think they do it because they've been allowed to, and nobody has stopped them.
Is it a war crime to intentionally target a child?
Yes. Targeting a child with lethal force, whether it's live ammunition, a drone strike, any other type of targeted attack, is absolutely a war crime.
Not only is it a war crime, but it's also against U.S. law to provide support to foreign military units accused of human rights violations. It's known as the Leahy Law, after Senator Patrick Leahy, who sponsored it.
I worked for Senator Patrick Leahy.
His senior advisor, Tim Reeser, drafted the law.
There's probably not a unit in the Israeli army that either hasn't been trained and/or received equipment from the United States. But it is the only country they're aware of that the law has been so consistently not applied to.
Has it ever been applied to Israel?
Not that we're aware of. Had the Leahy Law, from its inception, been applied as it was intended in the West Bank and Gaza, then you would think, as in this country and in every country, that it would help to prevent those types of crimes from occurring because people would know that they could be held accountable.
I took care of a 19-month-old child who was shot in the thigh while she was playing outside of her tent. I took care of a 9-year-old boy who was shot in the right buttock while he was walking next to his tent. I did take care of a child who was brought in dead on arrival who was shot once in the left side of the chest, so through and through to the heart.
I went to the neonatal ICU in the morning, and they took me to a room where a mother was holding her baby. And they said this baby was shot. And I was like, what do you mean this baby was shot? The mother was breastfeeding Mustafa. A quadcopter came and shot baby Mustafa in the head, and that the bullet went in one side and went out the other side.
Kids that were being shot, it's every day.
Most of them were under the age of 10.
Would a pattern of children shot in the head or chest qualify for the Leahy law, or would you need to know each child's situation and case?
Any one of those cases could be a basis for triggering the Leahy law, and if there's a pattern, then that's all the more persuasive that this is not just some random mistake. It's rather a result of a culture in which those committing those crimes have no fear of being held accountable.
Israeli soldiers also operate in a culture where violence against Palestinians is not only overlooked, but often condoned by prominent politicians.
והילדים בעזה, הילדים בעזה הביאו על עצמם את זה. אגב, אני לא מפרידה בין המחבלים הרוצחים לבין החברה האזרחית בעזה. זה אותו דבר מבחינתי. מבחינתי אין הבדל ביניהם.
This impunity is further supported by loopholes in U.S. aid to Israel.
Israel's different.
Charles Blaha led a State Department office responsible for vetting thousands of allegations of human rights violations by foreign military units receiving U.S. funding.
So there is a special Leahy vetting process for Israel.
Of countries receiving vast U.S. assistance, only Israel has a separate vetting process, the Israel Leahy vetting form. Unlike others, Blaha says the U.S. accepts Israel's investigations without question, with final Leahy decisions made at the highest levels, including the Secretary of State.
Why do we have this form for this one country?
Because Israel receives assistance that's untraceable. It's a very elaborate, Byzantine, complicated, delay-ridden, high-level process that has been at fault for the State Department never finding a single Israeli unit had ever committed a gross violation of human rights. I signed off on that. I signed off for two reasons. I believed at the time that the State Department would implement that process in good faith. And I believed at the time in the Israeli military justice system. Both of those beliefs turned out to be incorrect.
So you've gone 180 degrees on two major beliefs that are consequential in a lot of people's lives. How does that sit with you?
I don't really know what to say. If I'd objected at the time, I certainly would have been overridden, but my name wouldn't be on the approval line. I was mistaken, I was wrong.
A cynic from the outside would see the vetting form as Byzantine by design. The purpose and the point of this was to offer obfuscation for Israeli forces to do what they want and not be hassled by U.S. laws.
I recognized at the time that it was very, very complicated, but I believed it would be implemented in good faith. I didn't think it would come to this, these thousands and thousands of deaths.
Against all odds, Mir lived.
انت بنت قوية يا ميرا صح؟ عشان هذا الوجع كله انت تحملتي وصرتي شاطرة وصرتي أحسن من أول إن شاء الله صح؟
ماما
يا ماما
هيك وقفي لا
How are you, Doctor? How are you?
When Dr. Syed went back to Gaza in December, Mira was regaining her ability to walk.
Mira.
The last time I saw her, she wasn't even opening her eyes. She was basically just kind of laying there after she was extubated.
بتقول لك إنه حطت مناكير.
Manicure.
على الفنجر.
Wow. She's talking normally, like.
Mira,
Yeah, all normal like before. So language is great. Standing, walking.
أنا ماسكة إيدها.
Yay, Mira! Oh, wow.
As Mira gets older, she will need additional surgeries, but she won't be able to get them in Gaza.
It's still swollen.
Days after Dr. Syed left Gaza, Mira's family survived a third attack. She was getting physical therapy when an Israeli bomb hit the building next door.
طبعا انه بعد الاصابه في الطلق في الراس انه بنتي كمان تنصاب كمان مره، فكان هذا الجنون عندي بحد ذاته.
Mira was spared, but her mother Isra was severely injured. She lost her leg.
إيش أخدتي في الحصة؟ إيش أخدتي في الدرس مع المس حنان؟ مش هتكون حياتي زي قبل. لازم أكون أقوى من هيك، لازم إني أنا أكون فعلاً مش يأسانة. بس أنا بحاول أدعمها قدر الإمكان نفسياً، حتى رغم وجعي، رغم مأساتي اللي أنا فيها، بدعمهم نفسياً دائماً.
Oh my God, I seriously can't. Oh my God.
I was at my daughter's award ceremony this morning, and I was in a room full of small children, and they were celebrating their teeth, who lost a tooth today. Suddenly, I just had this picture. I had a child in my last mission whose name was Sammy, and his entire face was blown off. And I was holding his teeth, his mandible in my hand. And I just couldn't help thinking, like, how could this be the same planet? If I was the only one who said, hey, I've seen children shot in the head, it's very easy to dismiss. If 40 other healthcare workers are saying the same thing, that's a body of evidence that's incontrovertible.
In Gaza, I saw the concept of innocence of children or protection of children was purposely destroyed with intent.
There will be some children that are broken and will forever be broken.
You're wiping out a certain number, you're maiming a certain number, and you're permanently, mentally, and emotionally disabling the rest, and that's going to be passed down to the next generation. So this is how you cripple a society.
They say that Gaza is the graveyard of human rights. And for me, it was really the graveyard of my belief in the human race being able to challenge its worst impulses. I don't know that I can ever get that back. If this was your child, would you want the world to turn their back on you? Would you want people to look away? And these kids that I left behind, they're continuing to be threatened with death all the time.
She lasted about 3 minutes with no air. My patients' health and safety, and the health and safety of myself, my colleagues, my community, was put at risk because of corporate greed.
Fault Lines investigates how a private equity firm gutted a hospital chain for profit.
I am forever incomplete.
Gutted on Al Jazeera.
In 1948, more than 700,000 Palestinians were forcibly expelled from their historic homeland. Today, Palestinians in Gaza are facing genocide, and the occupation of the West Bank is being violently entrenched. Stay with Al Jazeera as we mark 77 years of Nakba.
In July 2024, protests by Bangladeshi students led to the downfall of Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina's authoritarian rule. In the second of a two-part investigation, 101 East asks, what's next for Bangladesh? The Mother and the Monster, Part 2 on Al Jazeera.
This is a region that is rapidly developing, but it's one also that is afflicted by conflicts, political upheavals.
Some of those we talked to elsewhere are saying that they fled after hearing that other villages had been attacked.
What we do in Al Jazeera is try to balance these stories, the good, the bad, the ugly, tell it as it was, and give the people who allow us into their lives dignity and humanity as we tell their stories.
For over 30 years, Human Appeal has been making the most of your mercy. Our teams successfully deliver your charity to those who need it most across the Muslim world. We are feeding, building, caring, curing, planting, purifying, teaching, and helping transform lives. This is Mercy in Action. This is Human Appeal.
A major escalation in the conflict between India and Pakistan. Islamabad says it carried out retaliatory strikes against India. Hello, I'm Darren Jordan. This is Al Jazeera, live from Doha. Also coming up. Earlier, explosions rocked the Pakistani cities of Rawalpindi and Peshawar. Islamabad says India was targeting its air bases. Also ahead, the US proposes a new plan to coordinate aid deliveries to Gaza, sidestepping the UN. And celebrating Victory Day, world leaders look on as Russia marks the end of World War II. The conflict between India and Pakistan is rapidly escalating, with Islamabad saying it's launched retaliatory strikes against India. Pakistan's army says it targeted an Indian missile storage facility and air bases. Those strikes came after Islamabad accused New Delhi of sending a wave of missiles towards 3 Pakistani air bases. The Pakistani military says Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif has called a national security meeting. Well, earlier, Pakistan accused India of targeting 3 air bases, one of them in the city of Rawalpindi in Punjab province. The Pakistani military says none were damaged.
The missile attack by India on the Pakistan Air Force bases. Majority of missiles have been intercepted by the alert air defense system of the Pakistan Armed Forces. The few that have been able to sneak in have not been able to cause any damage to the flying assets of Pakistan Air Force as per the initial damage assessment reports.
And residents have reported hearing multiple explosions and gunfire in Peshawar, that's in northwestern Pakistan. They were heard in the early hours of Saturday. Al Jazeera's Kamal Haider joins us on the phone now from the Pakistani capital, Islamabad. Kamal, so what more are Pakistani officials saying about this military operation being launched, which is the promised retaliation against India?
Indeed, it was after the attack on the airfield, which shook the city of Rawalpindi in the early hours of the morning, and after several days of sending suicide drones all over Pakistan, the Indian Air Force attacked these bases with standoff munitions, which means that they must have fired these from a distance. After that, Pakistan has launched a massive retaliation attack. As we speak, we are being told that drones are still hovering over Delhi. Pakistan has struck several major frontline military bases. They are claiming that they've destroyed an S-400 battery, that they've destroyed several airfields. They've attacked artillery, gun positions. And the Pakistani Prime Minister has called a meeting of the National Command Authority. Now, this is a step higher because this deals with Pakistan's nuclear weapons, and therefore the situation is extremely critical. We are also getting reports that there have been some drone activity over Peshawar, which was dealt with by Pakistani anti-aircraft fire. We are also told that Pakistani JF-17 fighters are launching hypersonic missiles. These are air-launched hypersonic missiles at Indian targets, and Pakistan has warned that if India retaliates, Pakistan will then go for key infrastructure critical to India. So the situation and the escalation is extremely alarming.
Yeah.
What is needed right now... Go ahead, Derek.
I was going to say, Kamal, as you said, India had earlier fired those missiles into Pakistan, saying it hit Pakistani air bases. Is Pakistan giving any information on what those missiles hit and any damaged cause?
Well, according to the Pakistani military spokesperson, the missiles, many of them were intercepted by Pakistan's anti-aircraft missiles. However, some of them, he said, had landed, but he said that they had not caused any damage to any of the aircrafts or critical infrastructure at the air bases. So it is too early to see what kind of effect those Indian attacks did have, but it has definitely prompted a massive retaliation effort by Pakistan.
All right, Al Jazeera's Kamal Haider, they're live for us in Islamabad. Kamal, thank you. Let's speak to Kulsum Sharif. She's live for us in New Delhi. Kulsum, so have we had any response yet from Indian officials to those Pakistani claims it's now launched retaliatory strikes targeting Indian military facilities?
Good morning, Jordan. We are waiting for an official briefing from the Indian Armed Forces that should take place at 10 a.m. local time, 4:30 GMT on some clarity of what has happened. Right throughout the night, we've heard of loud explosions. We don't know what these explosions are, so we're waiting for this briefing for some clarification on what has happened. But there are reports of heavy exchange of fire in the border areas. In terms of casualties, we are given to understand 3 people have been killed, one of whom is a district official whose house was hit in Jammu. Between India and Pakistan, of course, there have been claims and counterclaims, but India has always maintained it's responding to attacks from Pakistan.
Yeah, Kulsum, and earlier Pakistan accused India of targeting 3 of its air bases, one of those in Rawalpindi. What has India been saying about those earlier missile strikes and what they were actually targeting inside Pakistan?
As of now, I cannot confirm what India has said because there is no official word. Maybe in the course of the day, we will hear, even from the Indian Armed Forces when they hold this briefing, on what has happened throughout the night. But much of the escalation took off on Friday evening. There was a complete blackout in Jammu and surrounding areas, sounds of heavy artillery fire and gunshots throughout the night.
Just a final thought to you, Kulsum. How is this conflict being viewed on social media there in India? Because there has been talk of misinformation surfacing on various platforms.
Absolutely. That's a completely different world. If you were to look up on India-Pakistan tensions or anything related to India-Pakistan, social media is throwing up a heady concoction of, fact and fiction pulled together. It's hard to differentiate between what's real and what's artificial intelligence. Hard to differentiate between propaganda and facts that are being put out. In fact, since the April 22nd attack in Pahalgam, when 26 Indian tourists were killed, the escalation has been a talking point throughout India. People are concerned, people are worried. At the same time, Indian government agencies are putting out information, trying to calm people, saying that, we have supplies of oil, we have essential supplies, so much so that on social media, there's news of people panic buying, and that's because of what they are seeing in social media, saying that there'll be a shortage of oil supply or essential supplies, and the government agencies are trying to calm people down.
All right, Al Jazeera's Kulthum Sharif there in New Delhi. Kulthum, thank you. Let's bring in Uday Bhaskar. He's a defence and security analyst. He's also the director of the Society for Policy Studies. That's an independent think tank in New Delhi. He joins us live from New Delhi. Uday, so this current escalation, it must be the worst we've seen in recent years between India and Pakistan. No sign of anyone backing down yet. How dangerous a moment is this, do you think?
I would describe the current situation as one of steady escalation. This entire conflict that we are now seeing unfolding began with the April 22nd terror attack in Pahalgam in India. Over the last 4 days, we have seen India carrying out its response to punish the perpetrators of terror. It's called Operation Sindoor. And today it's the fourth night, as it were. And in this period, you can see that the use of platforms has steadily increased in terms of the ordnance delivery capability. This is the jargon to say that missiles are now being used. Drones are now being used. And secondly, the geography of the targets that have been acquired and attacked has also increased on both sides. Pakistan had chosen in the first round to identify Indian military air assets along the entire India-Pakistan border, which, if you can recall the map, stretches from Gujarat, an Indian state, along the Arabian Sea, all the way up to Kashmir, which is in the high Himalayas.
Okay.
And airfields were targeted.
Let me just jump in there, Uday. I mean, we saw escalations like this in the past between India and Pakistan in 2016, 2019, but that didn't result in the level of military escalation we're seeing now. What's different this time around, briefly?
What is different this time around is the use of military ordnance such as missiles and drones. We have not seen them being used in this manner in the 2019 response in Balakot by India, or for that matter, the Pakistani response. And this time around, India has acquired targets in the Punjab province of Pakistan that are related to terror networks. For instance, two places, Bahawalpur and Muridke, they go back to the killing of the American journalist Daniel Pearl in 2002. So this is one area. So this is a difference that India has moved into Punjab for acquiring targets related to terror. And latest reports, these have not been confirmed. I think we should wait for the official briefing. Pakistan has reported an attack in and around Peshawar. If you can recall the geography of Pakistan, that's quite far away.
Uday, let me get a final thought from you. I mean, how much has national sentiment and social media been shaping the narrative from both sides and driving this escalation? Because both countries seem to be playing to a domestic audience here.
In a very significant way, because the leadership in both countries, Prime Minister Modi in India, and if I may say, General Munir in Pakistan, who is the de facto center of power in Pakistan, have to assuage the domestic constituency. In the case of General Munir, he also has to deal with other domestic factors such as Mr. Imran Khan, a popular politician. He's got an insurgency, a terror kind of situation with Balochistan. So uniting Pakistan around India as the enemy is one option. And yes, information and domestic sentiment are playing a major role. Alas, on occasion, it's a corrosive role.
Uday Bhaskar, many thanks for your time and your analysis. Many thanks for talking to Al Jazeera. Thank you.
Thank you for inviting me.
Well, the White House press secretary says Washington has called on both India and Pakistan to de-escalate tensions.
And this is something that the Secretary of State and, of course, now our National Security Advisor as well, Marco Rubio, has been very much involved in. The president has expressed he wants to see this de-escalate as quickly as possible. He understands these are two countries that have been at odds with one another for decades, long before President Trump was here in the Oval Office. However, he has good relationships with the leaders of both countries, and the Secretary of State, Marco Rubio, I spoke to him just yesterday. He has been in constant communication with the leaders of both countries trying to bring this conflict to an end.
Now, the United States has proposed a new plan to restart deliveries of aid into Gaza, sidestepping the United Nations. It says Israel will take part in providing security, but not distribution. The U.S. ambassador to Israel says more details will be revealed in the coming days. Israel has deliberately blocked the entry of food, water and medicines into Gaza for more than 2 months.
Israel is not doing anything. We call upon the United Nations, we call upon every NGO, we call upon every government, especially those who have been saying, why don't you do something? Why isn't something being done? Well, something is being done. So we invite people who have been concerned about it to join in this process. I will be the first to admit it will not be perfect, especially in the early days. It's a logistical challenge to make this work and to make it work well.
Well, Chris Gunnis is the former spokesperson for the United Nations Agency for Palestinian Refugees. He says the plan is meant to hide Israel's policy of starvation in Gaza.
There's only one word to describe this, and this is aid washing. This is a cynical attempt by the State of Israel and its allies in the United States and elsewhere to use aid to hide the fact that what's actually going on is people are being starved into submission. They're being starved as a part of the mass and illegal forced displacement, which is very much part of Israel's genocidal ambitions against the Palestinians. And to be clear, it's not just about genocide, it's part to do with the attempt by Israel to destroy UNRWA, because what we're seeing is the only organization, UNRWA, that's capable of staving off mass starvation. It's perhaps too late even to talk about that, but UNRWA is the only organization that has the infrastructure, the staff, the vehicles, the food distribution centers, the food warehouses, the sort of infrastructure we need. Only UNRWA has. We've moved beyond that now, but that's part of what we're seeing. We're seeing an attempt to aid wash, the instrumentalization of aid in order to hide a genocide, and we're seeing the destruction of UNRWA. UNRWA is reporting there are hundreds of tons of food in vehicles that UNRWA could take in, rotting on the other side of the Rafah crossing, kilometer after kilometer. Trucks which are full of food have been paid for, the trucks are being rented, the international community is paying for this food that is rotting in trucks when there are people, children, who are starving to death. And can we please stop using this phrase, facing starvation? Children aren't facing starvation in Gaza, they are starving.
Well, Israel's military has intensified its attacks on forcibly displaced Palestinians. A strike on tents has killed at least 6 Palestinians in Gaza City. Earlier, 4 people were killed in an attack on Jabalia refugee camp. The strike hit near a clinic belonging to the UN Agency for Palestinian Refugees. Israeli attacks killed at least 22 Palestinians across the Strip on Friday. The Israeli army also hit a store in Gaza City, killing at least 4 people. Gaza's health officials say nearly 53,000 Palestinians have been killed since Israel's war started more than 18 months ago. Well, some of Israel's most intense attacks targeted Rafah in southern Gaza. Al Jazeera's Tariq Abazoum reports from Deir al-Bala in central Gaza.
It has been another very difficult and rocky day for displaced families and civilians across the Gaza Strip in light of the very intensifying rate of attacks that included targeting residential homes across many geographical locations, alongside with makeshift tents and the very unprecedented surge of confrontations and battles in Rafah city in the far south of the Strip. Different videos that were published by the Israeli media outlet show the obliteration operations that are taking place in Rafah and the scale of attacks that have been conducted since dawn today. The Israeli military stated that over the past 72 hours, at least 150 airstrikes were launched on Gaza, which could be a sign on the severity of the security situation on the ground, where civilians are scrambling in order to find safety and at the same time to survive the next day in light of this very soaring Israeli military escalation on the ground.
Time for a short break here in Al Jazeera. When we come back, the new leader of the Roman Catholic Church celebrates his first Mass as pontiff. More on that. Stay with us.
It's a slow-moving system, this. The big showers that have formed some pretty nasty conditions under thunderstorms in the southern states are concentrating in Georgia, maybe, the panhandle of Florida and up through the Carolinas. The head of this system is moving through eastern Canada, so Newfoundland looks fairly wet and windy. But beyond that, much drier and quieter picture. Still cold enough on the higher ground, for example, in Colorado, maybe to get some snow out of it. And winding down through Washington and Oregon, the next system wants to throw a bit of rain at that coast of the US. And these showers, and this is Sunday's forecast, are still in Florida and the Carolinas. Slow moving, potentially pretty big. And the line extends down through the Gulf. So here they are, so affecting the weather in Mexico. Big showers here. They're going to be thunderstorms, hail, possibly flash floods down through the Yucatan as well, and influencing the weather increasingly further south through Belize, and then seasonal rain is typical now in Panama. In fact, for this part of South America, Panama then through Colombia towards Guyana, there could be some big thunderstorms at any time of the day, but seasonally that is right. This line, which we see so often, has produced more flooding in the southeast of Brazil, and it could do the same thing on Saturday.
There's no limit to how far a dream can take you. Star in your own adventure now. Qatar Airways.
Hello again, you're watching Al Jazeera. A quick reminder of our top stories here this hour. The conflict between India and Pakistan is rapidly escalating, with the Pakistani military saying it's launched retaliatory strikes against India. Pakistan's army says it's targeted an Indian missile storage facility and a number of air bases. Well, earlier, Pakistan accused India of targeting 3 air bases, one of them in the city of Rawalpindi in Punjab province. The Pakistani military says none were damaged. Now, fireworks lit up the night sky in Moscow as part of Victory Day celebrations. The display commemorated the 80th anniversary of the end of World War II in Europe. Earlier, a massive military parade in Red Square was attended by President Vladimir Putin and foreign leaders. Al Jazeera's Yulia Shapovalova has this report from Moscow.
An array of familiar faces cheering the marching troops in Red Square. More than 24 world leaders in Moscow to commemorate the 80th anniversary of victory over Nazi Germany. 16,000 troops, including those servicemen who've been fighting in Ukraine, units from 13 foreign states including China, Vietnam and Egypt, and some 200 pieces of military hardware. Unprecedented security measures around the parade Russian Minister of Defense Andrei Belousov hosted it for the first time. Chinese President Xi very much part of the public event, as well as attending various private meetings in and around the Kremlin.
This is a strategic partnership in terms of ensuring global and national security, as we are talking about a new architecture of the world, and both Russia and China are the architects of the new world order where the West no longer has hegemony.
Russian President Vladimir Putin choosing to only mention in brief the Ukraine conflict, instead concentrating on the heroic past of the Soviet people. Slovak Prime Minister Robert Fico and Serbian President Alexander Vučić, the only Europeans who flew to Moscow, here recording an informal video saying that Serbs and Slovaks are brothers forever. There have been no representatives of the Allied forces in Russia at these World War II memorial events. Instead, since the beginning of the Russia-Ukraine conflict, Moscow has been under multiple sanctions from those countries. But that doesn't seem to be upsetting Vladimir Putin, who's busy in the Kremlin, talking business and making new alliances with his prominent guests. Yulia Shapovalova, Al Jazeera, Moscow.
French President Emmanuel Macron has boarded a train from Poland to go to Kyiv. He will attend a meeting with other European leaders hosted by Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky. France and Poland signed a treaty on Friday committing both sides to mutual assistance in the event of an attack by Russia. During Moscow's Victory Day parade, President Putin said Russia was engaged in a righteous fight in Ukraine. Delegations from the US and China are meeting in Switzerland this weekend for the first trade talks since President Trump imposed sweeping tariffs. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent will take part in the talks. Trump has hinted he could lower the tariffs on imports from China from 145% to 80%. Bessent has said the meetings would focus on de-escalation instead of putting together a new trade deal. Pope Leo XIV has celebrated his first Mass as leader of the Roman Catholic Church. It took place in the Sistine Chapel in Vatican City, where he was elected on Thursday and attended by cardinals from over 70 countries. Jonah Hull reports from Vatican City.
The opening moves of a new pontificate. Pope Leo XIV presiding over Mass in the Sistine Chapel, his first homily or sermon offering clues to his vision for the Church.
God has called me so the Church may be ever more fully a city on a hill, an ark of salvation sailing through history, and a beacon that illuminates the dark nights of this world.
A new pope in a time of internal division and international crises, he promised to be a faithful administrator. And in a nod to his predecessor, Pope Francis, he said the Church should be judged by the holiness of its members and not the grandeur of her buildings. But what of the man himself?
I had a feeling it would be him, especially yesterday.
Mother Yvonne Rango is one of 3 women appointed to unusually high office by Pope Francis to serve alongside then Cardinal Robert Prevost in vetting the appointment of bishops.
It was a sign of confidence in women, that they could have a voice in naming of bishops, that they have the capacity and judgment that's complementary to men.
She describes a man of generosity, discretion and calm, a good listener, with worldly experience from his service in Chicago, Chiclayo, Peru, and the Vatican.
He has a capacity for dialogue between different cultures, between different realities and situations. He's a man of balance.
In his words and his history, then, we're able to build the picture of a bridge-building pope in a divided church, a peacemaking pope in turbulent times, and walking in at least some of the footsteps of his predecessor, Pope Francis, a humble pope, embracing the suffering and the poor. And for Mother Yvonne, who knows him well, the right pope at the right time. Jonah Hull, Al Jazeera, Rome.
Well, Pope Leo is the first cardinal born in the US to preside over the Catholic Church. His papacy emerges during a time of increasing conservative influence within the US Church. Right-wing Catholic groups are now advocating for the return of the old-style Latin Mass. Rob Reynolds reports.
For hundreds of years, Latin was the language of Catholic worship. Then, in the early 1960s, the reforms of the Second Vatican Council called for celebrating Mass in modern languages. While it is much less common now, the Latin Mass is still cherished by some traditionalists. At St. Vita's Catholic Church in Los Angeles, worshipers prefer the Latin rite.
The reverence and the peace and the beauty of that, it tends to stay with you throughout the day.
When I was growing up, we always had our masses in Latin.
In 2021, Pope Francis severely restricted the Latin Mass, saying it was dividing the church, with some factions using it to signal disapproval of reforms. After Pope Francis's decision, the Latin Mass suddenly became an important issue for a small but vocal group of conservative Catholics opposed to liberal ideas in the church.
Particular factions had begun to use it as a wedge issue or as a way to set themselves off from other Catholics as a holier sort of a group. And in particular in the American Catholic world, to resist some of the other initiatives that Pope Francis was doing.
The conservative Catholic faction is particularly strong in the United States, aligned with right-wing politics, opposition to abortion, and support for President Donald Trump.
It's influential. It recruits a lot of new young priests. It has some powerful leaders in the American Catholic world. And it punches above its weight in social media and places because it has a small group of very dedicated folks who put pressure on the bishops, who put pressure on Rome.
Pope Leo XIV, who is seen as likely to follow Francis's policies, will now have to foster unity. Might he relax restrictions on the Latin Mass?
I think the question the next pope will be asking won't be who wins and who loses, but what's best for the next stage of the church. If it continues to be used as this divisive wedge issue, that may drive the decision making. If he perceives it as an expression of love for the church, sense of unity under the pope, then maybe the decision goes in a different direction.
One of many challenges that the new pope and the 1.4 billion Catholics worldwide must now face. Rob Reynolds, Al Jazeera, Los Angeles.
Now, Africa is home to the greatest number of endangered cultural sites in the world, but only 10% of the locations on UNESCO's World Heritage List are actually on the continent. Climate change, looting and rapid development are among the factors that pose major threats to their preservation. Catherine Saw reports from the Gedi Monument in Kenya's Kilifi County.
An ancient coastal city that holds many secrets. Historians say it was built in around the 11th century, long before the transatlantic slave trade, before there was a country called Kenya. It was a thriving trading town, and it's one of 8 World Heritage Sites in the country.
But when it comes...
The director of Gedi Monument, Hussein Aden, traces its history to Persians who came to East Africa to trade.
After some 200, 300 years, it was assumed that the first settlers, the first inhabitants left the town. It was assumed that maybe the local people. The second, it's been assumed now it is Arabs and Africans.
Researchers say the last of the residents packed up and left at the turn of the 17th century. It's not clear why.
This is the palace. The city itself was extremely wealthy. It had mosques, houses, and well-constructed tombs. Now, historians say that the architecture is a marvel, but not much is known about what happened here.
Such World Heritage Sites inscribed by UNESCO are few in Africa. Some are under threat from, among other things, climate change, neglect, and war.
Cultural heritage is being destroyed by during armed conflicts, and we are seeing it. We're seeing it in Ukraine. Now we're seeing it. We've seen it in Syria. We've seen it in Iraq. We've seen it in Mali, in Africa, and I think even in Uganda, where fire has destroyed a World Heritage Site.
UNESCO delegates met in Nairobi to discuss how to protect the important cultural sites and push for more representation in the heritage lists.
It's not just a question of more sites on the list. It is also the question of quality. It is the question of understanding. This conference is not about loading the World Heritage. is about listening to our own values.
Those who are helping take care of the Gedi monument say they're doing the best they can to keep this mystical beauty safe. Catherine Soy, Gedi Monument on the Kenyan coast.
Well, that's it from me, Darren Jordan, for now. Of course, you can find much more information on our website, aljazeera.com. There it is on your screen. The news continues here on Al Jazeera after 101 East. Stay tuned. Thanks for watching. Bye for now.
It was an astonishing victory against a formidable foe. In our last episode, we looked at how a student-led uprising ousted Bangladesh's long-term dictator, Sheikh Hasina, and her notorious Awami League party. An interim government led by 84-year-old Nobel laureate Muhammad Yunus is now fighting to repair a shattered nation.
People's expectation is sky high.
While victims of state-sponsored terror demand justice.
Would you like to see Sheikh Hasina tried for her crimes?
By all means, for all enforced appearances, for all extrajudicial killings.
The old regime has left the country almost bankrupt. Law and order has broken down as the public grows ever more desperate for change. In the second part of this 101 East special, we ask what's next for Bangladesh. Who won the Nobel Peace Prize for pioneering microloans for impoverished families.
That is the hot seat there.
Leading Bangladesh is not a role he asked for or expected.
The students who called me up, and I said, no, not me. I don't want to get involved with running the country. You're much capable people in Bangladesh. You find them out. So I don't know. Everybody says you have to be there.
Nahed Islam, who led the student protests, told him